Good evening, Tamanjit sir. We'll be beginning the session in another 2 to 3 minutes. We are letting all the participants to join right now. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We warmly welcome you to the speaker session on entrepreneurship conducted by EDC Uiet Panjab University. EDC is the entrepreneur cell of UIIT. It was set up in 2011 with a motive to support such startup enthusiastic students to come up with the innovative ideas so as to become job creators and not merely the job seekers. We host several workshops, community meetups, pitching session, and Panjab University's national level e-summit called as Udyami annually so as to give students thorough insight about the startup world. This gives them the necessary push so as they bring about a change in the society. Today, we welcome our guest speaker, Tamanjit Bindra, co-founder of Kaagaz Scanner. Tamanjit is behind all the technology at Kaagaz. He has spent more than a decade coding internet products. Post his engineering degree, he worked for 3 years at Del Perron. After a short break and discovering himself more, he went to the work for 3 years at Magic Brick. He later joined Raftar.in, a high-traffic Hindi content aggregator, as the head of its tech team. He worked here for almost 2 years before joining Snehanshu Gandhi and Gaurav Sri Mill, the co-founder of Kaagaz app. Briefing about the Kaagaz app scanner, this is made in India mobile application with over 5 million downloads. Available in 8 different languages with some amazing features like PDF editing, PDF editing, encrypted storage on Indian servers, and one of the best features, no watermark, and even better, no ads. That means no jig jig while waiting for the ads to complete. Without further ado, we welcome Tamanjit Bindra on the board.
Thank you everyone. Thank you for the warm welcome and for the introduction. Hi all, I'm Tamanjit Bindra. I'm co-founder of Kaagaz. Since most of my journey has already been introduced, I'll skip this and move on to my journey with Kaagaz. So this was 2 years back, 2.5 years back, when we Tapp Me, our previous startup, we were kind of at crossroads because although our business was profitable, but we were doing B2B and it was not something that we were enjoying. So we were deciding to shut it down. While we were shutting down Tapp Me, we decided to move on to and start another startup. And we started off with Sorted AI. Sorted AI is kind of prequel to what Kaagaz is now. Because with Sorted AI, what we were planning was that we were planning a smart assistant that essentially would help you in your day-to-day tasks. So the vision that we had was that everybody is kind of overburdened with a lot of responsibilities. They tend to have bills to pay, remembering when the bills are coming up, school admissions are coming up, or a lot of things which are essentially burdening your day-to-day life. And you need an assistant to help you through all of that. So our novel idea was that we would essentially take out or extract information from all your documents which are on your phone, from your email, from notifications, SMSs, everything, and make that information work for you, like an assistant would work for you. So essentially, if you have a car insurance reminder coming up, instead of you getting boggled with multiple SMSs, you would only get one reminder that today you have to go ahead and pay your car insurance. This is the payment link, and go ahead and pay it. So that was the idea that we were building, Sorted with. Now it so happened that since we were we were scanning a lot of documents on the phone, scanning as in going through these documents, our AI engine would go through them. We realized that a lot of images require much better quality. So we decided that we would make a scanner which would essentially act like a extended arm for Sorted. And it so happened that we launched Kaagaz Scanner, and that 2 weeks post that, the Chinese app ban happened. And we were at the right place at the right time. I wouldn't call it lucky because we worked very hard to get to that luck part. And essentially, that was a lesson that I learned also, that luck favors those who are ready for it. So essentially, the Chinese app ban happened, and Cam Scanner got banned. We got a lot of traction. We got more than 1 lakh downloads in a day itself. And people were essentially looking for an Indian alternative. And we essentially were loved by people, and a lot of people adopted our broken product at that time. And since then, we've been working on it. Now, the interesting thing that happened with this whole journey was that we were exposed to a new set of audience, or a new set of users, which we hadn't realized existed. And that was the Bharat user. Bharat user is essentially anyone who has come onto the internet post the Geo revolution, has actually accessed internet for the first time using a smartphone. Now, there are some key features of a Bharat user. Bharat user, as I told, has come onto the internet for the first time using a smartphone, is a mobile-only user, has never used a desktop or laptop in their lives. And for them, smartphone is kind of a key or gateway to internet, as well as to a lot of things that they would want to do in their lives. Another key feature is that they're kind of aloof of how technology worked before smartphones. So they never got onto the email. They got onto messenger first, and WhatsApp is their key way of communicating for about their business to or about their work to other people. So WhatsApp versus email, they're primarily a WhatsApp user. Another interesting thing about a Bharat user is that a Bharat user, non-search user, they essentially, if they have to search, they would rather use voice, or essentially they are kind of unaware of what they would want to search, and whatever the recommendation engines of different apps suggest to them, they go ahead and you look at that. So they're kind of a non-discovery kind of a user. Discovery in the sense that they don't go ahead and look out for content. They may want to look at content or things which they are already used to. And I'm talking specifically about content right now because essentially that's how the Bharat user has gone onto the internet. They came onto the internet. One was to communicate using WhatsApp, and also to get get not only social media but also content that was readily accessible to them. Now, because internet got very cheap, as I already said, they kind of are a non-search user. If they have to go ahead and search, they would rather search using voice rather than typing anything, and that's where a lot of times they're not unaware of what to search. They kind of search for the lingos that are kind of used for them. So instead of so they would use even to the extent that when they're searching, they would use smileys rather than typing something. And last but not least, they're a non-English user. They prefer using their regional language for whatever things that they were using the phone for. Now, we got exposed to this audience because what has happened, interestingly, is that earlier they had come onto the internet to use it for entertainment and for communication through WhatsApp, etc. But now they've realized that the power of smartphones that they use is incredible, and it's like in fact, I don't know how many of you would have used computers when you were kids, but when I was a kid or when I was a student, the kind of laptops or desktops we got then, the configuration is very similar to what smartphones are now. And smartphones kind of are like computers in your hands. And so these Bharat users now have realized how efficient their life can be if they use it for if you use these smartphones not only for entertainment but also for their business as well as for their day-to-day tasks. So that's essentially what Bharat user is. And so now when they got onto the internet and post using it for entertainment as well as for communication, as and when they realize that they can use the smartphones for their day-to-day tasks. Before that, a precap to that, what were the tools that they were using when they just got onto the internet, or what are the alternatives of how organization of the work can be done? Right now, there are two sets of them of how generally people would work. One is the hacky way of doing it, either write it out on a notebook or use WhatsApp for their own communication. The problem with this is it's very difficult to manage because a lot of information is already scattered across different. Some of it is in WhatsApp, some of it is in maybe Telegram, some of it is written in the notebook. It's unorganized and it serves a very small use case. The other solutions, which essentially people call as our competitors, are the likes of the Adobe's of the G Suites of the world. The problem with these kind of tools is that they were essentially made for desktop. and they kind of fit into your mobile phones. The iconography, as in how the icons or how things work, are kind of very similar to what it was on desktop. Since if Bharat users never use the desktop version of these apps, they are kind of aloof of how it would be, and it doesn't really get into their organic flow of working. And they are unaware of how how powerful it could be. These tools could be because they've never essentially used it on their desktop. Another important thing is that a lot of these tools seem to be very complicated for these users. Bharat user essentially, although has gotten onto the internet now and has been using apps for some time, but a lot of these users are still kind of scared of how technology works, and the more complicated a product is, it's much more difficult for these Bharat users to adopt to it. Another thing that we noticed was that these tools that were existing, they kind of had email-based login, which essentially a Bharat user is not comfortable with. They're English only, and as I said, they have a steep learning curve because a lot of this, it's easy for you and me because we have used these tools on desktop and laptops. But for a lot of the users who come onto the internet now, for them, this is kind of very scary because they have to get their work done, but they're kind of overwhelmed by how difficult it could be for them. So that's what we are trying to build. We are trying to build a document super app for Bharat. Essentially, we are building easy to use tools for on mobile to empower 500 million plus Bharat users who don't have a desktop. The journey of our users has been so anyone who's come on to the internet now and has started using tools which are going to help them in their day-to-day tasks. The first task that they use is to digitize. So by digitizing of documents, for example, the first step is using scanning. So essentially digitize your already physical documents, make them make a soft copy of them, which can essentially be used over a period of time. So that's why we developed scanner first. And after scanning, we realized that a lot of these users are also unaware of the fact that their phones can also be used to read documents. It may sound strange, but a lot of these users are even unaware of how a PDF document would open up on their phones. So we thought that we should give these users the access to documents that they are sharing on internet or through WhatsApp. So to read or consume those documents, we introduce a PDF reader also inside Kaagaz. And our hypothesis was that a lot of people are unaware that their phones can also be used for, or they don't have a default PDF reader on their phones. So that's where we got Kaagaz as a PDF reader also. And when it clicked, we have a lot of traffic from users who use Kaagaz as a PDF reader only. Another interesting thing was that the Bharat users, when they came on to the smartphones or when they come onto the Kaagaz app, interestingly, if you would see how Kaagaz works versus how Adobe Scanner works, Adobe essentially when you open up, it opens up into camera, right? Why we don't do that with Kaagaz is because we realized, managing your documents on your phone is a pain, especially Android, since the file system is so complicated. So we thought that we should bring up a way in which people will be able to organize their documents. And that's why when you get into Kaagaz, you see your documents lined up first, and you can also move them into folders to organize them properly. And that's what we intend to do with the file manager piece. And all of these documents that you scanned or read and got into Kaagaz or organized, the idea is that they should be accessible to you even if you switch your phone. This is another very interesting thing that we came across, was that Bharat users, although they've come on to using smartphones, but a lot of these users use very low-end smartphones. And after a few months, their phone starts hanging. So the only solution that they essentially go ahead and do is they format their phones. And we face this problem because a lot of users who come to us and are for the was a completely offline app. Users came to us telling us that their documents are gone now. They formatted their phone. So we thought we should allow users to back up their documents in cloud, so that even if they format their phones, their documents are safe, and they can access them back. And that's why we got in cloud storage. We got 250 MB free for these users, which essentially, if they want to, if they think that they have more documents, they can go ahead and pay and get more storage from us. And the 250 MB in itself has got a lot. It's like 1,000 pages, and 1,000 pages, it means even if 10 pages, 100 plus documents. So there's kind of still a lot of documents that people can pack up for free on cloud. So this was the document consumption and storage. Essentially, what we were trying to do was that we were trying to map the journey of how a user who come onto the internet for the first time would do for their documents. So it's like reimagining how you would want to make things for around documents now in this age, only for mobiles. So this was the document consumption storage. We realized that other than this, people would also want to edit their documents. So we got PDF tools. A lot of these tools were already available for separate documents, but as a separate entity, we got in here because it also helps people discover some of the features that we already have. So, simple things as if you have a 10-page document, you want to share only 2 pages out of it, you could. That is how you would split a document. If you would want to compress a document, or lock with a PDF password, or unlock a PDF password file and share with it. So all of these tools are available as document editing tools in Kaagaz. We're building for Bharat, and we're building along with Bharat. What that means is that we are also learning every day how Bharat users think and work. And that's the beauty of building, for Bharat users, because you're kind of learning so many new things every day. So some of the things that we have learned is that that people, Bharat users essentially don't use emails. So we got OTP-based login. We do have email login also, but OTP is the main way of logging in. Our app is available in 10 plus Indian languages. And interestingly, since a lot of our users are so dependent on WhatsApp, we got WhatsApp import so that all the documents can be at one place instead of them trying to search where the documents are. So essentially, all your WhatsApp documents can be imported into Kaagaz. We've recently launched a creation tool. That is essentially what we are trying to do with Canva for Bharat. We are essentially reimagining how Canva would be for Bharat users, especially for Bharat solopreneurs. Solopreneurs are anyone who are entrepreneurs, but they're one-man entrepreneurs. Essentially, they're not freelancers; they are businessmen, but one-man, Superman kind of businessmen. And creation tools essentially for them would be, how to essentially wish their own customers during festival, or to tell them that if there is a sale going on. So all of that can be done using simple form-based tool, wherein a design can be made for your personalized design can be made. So if you have to wish your customers for Diwali or Christmas or in New Year, you put in your business name and your mobile number and just spread it across to your customer base on WhatsApp. We're also thinking of getting, we haven't worked on India Stack integration yet, but we are thinking of Also integrating with DigiLocker so that all the documents that are available also come into Kaagaz. The idea is that Kaagaz should be a one-stop shop for all your document-related things. We've got a lot of love and support from users across, and as and a lot of people on Twitter have kind of love how our app and is there. This includes a lot of prominent people, as is visible here. We've also been recognized by the Ministry of Education. We were also a special mention at the Atmanirbhar App Challenge last year. And we've also got tweets from Man Ki Baat updates, Digital India, and Ministry of Education. Even the Honorable Education Minister of India tweeted about us. So I would love to spend some time on my learnings through the journey of not only Kaagaz but also throughout my career. The first most important thing that I've learned is whenever you're building something, or whenever you're trying to take up a journey, or you're unsure of whether whatever the decision you're taking is going to be the best decision for you or not. I always start off with asking myself, why am I going to be doing this? So why becomes the most important question about even bigger than how you're going to be doing something, or where would you start off, or what is that you're going to be building. The most important question is why. So if I take my own example, when I was thinking of doing a startup or not, the question I asked myself was, why would I want to do a startup? And that helps me clarify my own thoughts about whether I am going to be 100% or 110% into this whole journey or not. And this the why question also works across. It's not only works for person this thing, but also for if you're going to be building a startup. Why would people want to use your product, or why now, or why only your product and no other product? So why as a question helps you sort out your thoughts and challenges you to think deeper about the problem, whether it's going to be whether you're doing it for the long run, or whether it's going to be used by others or not. So why essentially becomes the most important question. This gentleman on the screen is Sam Altman. This is his quote. Make something that people want. In fact, he goes on ahead and says that a startup can go ahead and mess up on a lot of fronts and still be successful. But if you're making something that people really don't want, then your startup would not work. It would essentially fail. We faced this when we were making Sorted, because although Sorted was a very smart product that we were thinking of, but a lot of people were not using Sorted. And it was kind of in a zone wherein it's a good product that you're making, but people are not using it. And it's kind of a dead meat, which essentially nobody would want to touch. So if you're starting up or thinking of starting up, I think this is another very important point that you should keep in mind. Always go ahead and make something that people want. Another learning is ideas are commodity and the execution of them is not. Ideas are cheap, and a lot of you would have come up with a lot of good ideas. But the truth is that if you thought of an idea, somebody else also would have thought of the same idea in the world, because our brains are wired in such a way that someone or the other would conclude or come to a particular idea. But the who what decides whether your idea is going to be successful or not versus someone else who's also thought of it is how you're going to be executing the whole problem, and that's what defines or changes your whole this thing journey. In fact, there's a saying in the startup world: ideas are, taking a chess analogy, ideas are pawns, execution is the king. So as long as you are sure or you're executing it well, your idea would be successful, but the other way around would not work. Uh, and also the while you're working on your idea, the idea is also that you stay and stick to your goals as much as you want. So as long as you should be there, because to win you will have to stay there, keep on hammering the nail, keep on working on the problem, and it's isn't easy, and that's why when I said execution is the king, ideas are cheap. It's because when you're trying to execute something, you realize it's really tough, and especially if you're making a B2C startup, it's very, very tough. A lot of customers behave in a very different way from what you would have thought. And you keep on learning and you keep on going, keep on working on the problem. And it's going to be a long journey. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. Lionel Messi said that, I became an overnight success, but it just took me 17 years to get to that. That's how tough the journeys are. That's how long it is. The idea is to keep yourself motivated and stay into the game. A lot of you guys are here, and I'm sure a lot of you guys are actually thinking about starting up an entrepreneurship, or at least have that idea in your head. That's why you guys are here. So I have a few questions that I've summarized about if you guys are thinking about startup, doing your own startup or entrepreneurship, how to, just answering few of these questions that have come across often. Post this, we can also we can open the floor for more questions. The first question that we often get is how to come up with an idea. The answer to this isn't very simple, but I've realized that there are phases to this. If you have a problem, which is your own personal problem, which you think is also a problem for a lot of other people, that's going to be the best idea that you can work on, because you kind of are going to be passionate personally for that. Giving you again an analogy. So Sorted AI, how it started was my co-founder Snehanshu, he and Gaurav, they were away on a business trip to Singapore, and their phone was not accessible for more than a day. And there was an emergency at home, and his Snehanshu's wife couldn't find the health insurance document. The phone was not accessible, so for quite some time it was such that there was a panic kind of a situation. So Gandhi, Snehanshu, when he realized this, he started looking for organizing his documents at one place where his wife can also go ahead and access it, any other family member can. So what I'm getting at is that just for the personal problem that he faced, and he thought that he should be able to organize documents. He looked for alternatives which are there on the market, but every document required you to do it manually. His idea was that we should be able to do it automatically, since it's something that, because manual effort requires a lot of work and people tend to procrastinate. They don't love working on things that are going to be repetitive and is not challenging. So he wanted to develop an automated way of organizing documents, and that was its starting point for Sorted AI. So if you have an idea that is your personal and you think that other people can also go ahead and use it, I think that's going to be the best idea. If we don't come across such an idea, the other, as I said, there are stages to it. The other stage is that look around and you see close funds facing with a problem, and then try to think what could be, or if that problem exists, and if it exists for other people also. So essentially, one is your own personal problem. If you can't do that, then problems which are of near and dear ones. Or alternatively, the last way of doing it is that if you come ahead and realize that there is a problem which a lot of people already have, and you think you can go ahead and make a good solution for that. So that's the stages of how I've thought of coming up with an idea. The other important question that I often get is how to find your co-founders. Ideally, your co-founders should be with people who you've worked with already. That can be a friend, but how friendship works and how professional relationship works is very, very different. And why this is important is because startup journey is very, very long. And if your professional ethics don't match, you would eventually not be working together. So the way to find co-founders is, one is that you should have worked with each other, at least on a project, to know how you think and how you work professionally in that sense. Another important thing that I've realized is that if your co-founders and you have skill sets which are kind of not matching, kind of matching in the sense that you have certain domain that is your own domain that you'll be working on. We've been lucky, me, Snehanshu and Gaurav, because we have our roles divided very well. I look after tech, Snehanshu looks after product, and Gaurav looks after marketing. So the idea is that your role should be compatible in the sense that all you co-founders are not working on the same thing, because somebody has to look after the product, somebody has to look after technology, and somebody has to look after marketing. And that's your own domain. You can cross question each other about a problem, but a domain is a person's specialization, and that he or she would want to keep. So these are the two essential things that I've realized. One is that you should have skill sets which are kind of compatible, and the second is that you should have worked with each other for some time. The other interesting question, and question that excites a lot of people, is how to raise funding and prepare a business plan. Interestingly, a lot of startup ideas are not ideas that can be funded by VC businesses. To understand how VC businesses work, or VC venture capitalists, how venture capitalists give funding, or why they would give funding, because they don't give funding for products or companies which are profitable today. They are essentially giving funding for companies that can grow very fast, go ahead and capture a market, and eventually would turn profitable, and there would be no other competition. So the idea of a VC money is that they will provide you money today in share by taking away some of your shares, so that you can use that money to grow very, very fast. By growth, it means marketing, it means getting a team in place, it means getting as many customers on board as you can. So a lot of traditional businesses are not VC compatible, because they have linear growth, wherein the growth year on year, month on month, helps you grow. You get profitable, and eventually you're growing at a steady state. VC funds look for businesses which are not growing in a linear pace. They're growing in an exponential pace. The hockey stick curve that you would have seen, the exponential curve. So the first and most important thing is to understand that most of the business, or a lot of businesses, are not going to be VC compatible ever. And you should be ready to that. And it's perfectly okay to make a business which grows linearly and really doesn't need external funding. How to prepare a business plan? How to raise funding? So one is to understand that this is what is required to what kind of business is required. Once you understand that, the idea then is essentially you make an MVP, that is a minimum viable product. With that minimum viable product, essentially you go ahead and approach angels or people in your own circle who would want to use that, who had used your product and would want to invest in your company. So it's a step-by-step process. There are different stages to it. One is when you make an MVP, it works. You have some users, you get angel funding or you get seed funding post that. When you have product market fit, so product market fit is when your product is used by a lot of people, or even if it's not used by a lot of people, their life is going to change if your product doesn't exist tomorrow. So that's when you have product market fit. Your product and market have a fit, and that's when you would get your next round of funding. That is essentially a Series A. And post that, essentially, it's the journey is around monetization and other things. So the idea is that you work on a minimum viable product, which essentially you get users to start using, and that's how. And then you pitch your product to VCs or to angels who would essentially go ahead and put money in your company. For pitching, you would also, there are competitions that you could go ahead and go ahead. A lot of seed funds tend to have competition where you can pitch your product, or you could go ahead even directly email seed funds. So you have to understand that there are different stages of funding, and you only funds which essentially are going to be funding very early stage startups is who you're going to be approaching. And you would also be preparing a pitch deck. Look up on the internet. There are a lot of good, pitch decks which are available of how you should, or literature available how you should be making a pitch deck. With your pitch deck and defining of it on multiple listing is how you would essentially be raising your funding. Business plan is a part of the pitch deck, and making a business plan is essentially telling the VC community that this is a cool product. This is how you are going to be getting your users, and this is how eventually you're going to be making money. It may not be very clear on the first day, and it may require some thinking, but business plan essentially is a part of your pitch. Essentially, you're not selling a product or you're not selling a business plan. You're essentially selling a story to the VC community, and VC community loves investing in stories of how big a product can be. There's a lot of very good literature available about how to raise funds. Please search on the internet. If you need my help, I'll help you get to that. Then there are personal questions around, what about financial stability, because what happens is during a startup journey, a lot of for a long duration of time, you may not be earning a single penny. You may not be drawing a salary because your company doesn't have the money for that. Your company even doesn't have the money to have some employees. And it's a tough stage. It's not it's not the best way to earn money. Startup not the best way to earn money or earn a lot of money. The chances of your startup failing are much higher than they succeeding. And if while you're working, you would see your friends buying houses, buying cars. But that's where the question of why becomes important. Why did you want to do this? Is it for earning money? I would suggest that there are much better ways. In fact, having a stable income, doing a job really helps you get financial stability. If financial stability is what you seek, then startup journey is not the best place for you to. If it's so, for me specifically, the answer was that I would want to create a product or something of value that people would remember me for. Uh, and that's the idea of why I wanted to do a startup. I understood that financial stability is going to be tough. For 2 years, almost uh, 2.5 years, uh, I was not drawing a salary. Me and my co-founder, I was eating out of my savings. Uh, I was, in fact, my wife was working, so we were running the house on her salary. The idea or the this idea that you should be is that you should be comfortable with whatever you're doing, and if you're uncomfortable with it, there's no point doing it. You should be comfortable with the fact that for a long duration of time you may not be earning money, and there will be a lot of social pressure, parental pressure of why you're doing this when it's not going to be an outcome, to get to an outcome. But if your why is answered, previously, that this is why you are going to be doing it becomes easy. So sure, and seeking financial stability, I would suggest not go for startups. Uh, in fact, you can go ahead and work for an early stage startup, and that also would essentially help you gain the best of the experience in the world as well as some financial stability. Uh, but for financial stability, startups are not the best place for you to be. The last question that I would like to talk about is, what if I don't like it and just want to do a job? I mean, I think I've answered partially, but if you don't like it, there's no point doing it. And if you like it, everything or every problem in the way would seem like a small problem or small hurdle. It comes to a point that eventually everything just seems like a day-to-day thing, right? Uh, and keeping yourself healthy mentally and physically is very, very important in the whole journey. If you don't like it, I would say there's no shame in quitting startup. Go ahead and get a job. Live a happy life. That's what we're all striving for, right? To get happy lives. And with that, the conclusion that I would like to come to is that there is no right or wrong. Not really. There is just the thing that you do. And that's what we all are doing, right? I'm done with the talk. You can open up the floor for questions.
So whosoever is having the question, they can write them in the this message box, and we'll then forward it to Tamanjit sir.
Meanwhile, I wanted to ask you something.
Sure.
So first of all, you told us how basically users are not using those keywords. Maybe they would use emojis and all to like basically like search for their query and all. So like it looks like that you had a very solid market research done, right? So like what I want to know is that how did you go about it? Basically knowing your crowd, that okay, these are the people we are targeting and these are the steps we need to take.
Uh, that's a good question. Knowing your audience is very, very important. And we realized our forte was with the help of social media. We have a very strong social media presence, especially on Twitter. And initially, since there was an anti-Chinese kind of a sentiment, uh, we kind of understood that the kind of emotion that is going to be moving people to use the product is going to be if you have an Indian presence or a Bharat presence. So that was how we got our first set of users. When they use the product, they realize that this is a product which is an Indian product, which they can probably use and go ahead and tell other people. And we got a viral loop from that. So these are called viral loops, wherein essentially something of some people become your you know they become your advertisers. They go ahead and tell in the circles, and every circle has an influencer, uh, small influencers. So for example, in a family, since we have a very patriarchal society, father is essentially the influencer, right? Whatever the father in the house says, essentially everybody goes there and do that. Or in terms of technology, even a kid in the house, right? He's kind of an influencer in the family. So if you get to the influencers, they become your advertisers, and once that happens, there is a viral loop in place. Uh, and when you talk to your customers, that's another important point. The more you talk to your customers, the more you realize that these are the things that they're actually seeking, and that's how they think. Uh, and that's most of your answers come from there by talking to your customers. I hope that answers your question.
Right, right. So like there is one more question that kind of follows up to my previous question. So how you said that that like there was this viral marketing, viral loop thing. So there might have been a very large influx of customer, right?
Right.
So
Right.
like how did you scale your tech stack accordingly?
Interestingly, the best thing that we did was that we made a completely offline app initially. Uh,
Oh.
so that helped us scale. Now we understand how big the scale is and we work accordingly. But uh, the idea always is to decentralize technology. So, in terms of scaling up, as much as decentralized tech you can build up, you should be making up whatever can happen on a person's device that helps you scale up faster. Uh, and then there are ways of doing that, right? In terms of architecture, you build up architecture which are microservices based, essentially, and are auto scalable. Use cloud, which helps you auto scale your tech. So all of these are there, which helps you through which essentially you understand and grow with your journey. Uh, I hope that answers your question.
So I have a question. So a few moments ago, we discussed that uh, for a very long period of time, we might not be earning any money out of our startup. So there's a question from Saminga that how do we convince our parents that we want to do a startup?
Uh, I really don't have an answer to that. The answer to if you see, parents always would want the best for you, right? Uh, uh, if your parents are ready to go ahead and fund your MBA, I would suggest that you tell them that doing a startup is 10 times better than an MBA, because the learnings that you get while you're doing a startup, practical learnings, they're going to change your life forever. Even if you go ahead and do a startup for a year, that's better than 10 years of MBA, because your way of thinking, your understanding about not only business, not about different aspects of how a company works, business, compliance, technology, not only that improves, but your understanding of human psychology, especially if you're making a B2C product, how humans think, what motivates people, why would they want to use your product, all of that understanding doesn't go waste. It helps you grow so fast as a human being, that you would go ahead and become successful eventually. Convincing your parents, I would say that the only way to do that is that if you're convinced yourself, you would go ahead and find your uh, answer to that, and that's like your first pitch. If you're able to convince your parents, you would be able to convince your users as well as VCs eventually. So yeah, that's your battle. You have to go and fight it yourself.
So there's another question coming from Sanitya. He wants to ask that how do we build the culture of a team?
Uh, it's very important that your initial hires are all bought into the idea of what you're building. Uh, we got our first hire fresh out of college. That was an intern who eventually came, and we absorbed that person as an employee. Our second key hire after Kaagaz was almost 6 months after Kaagaz was launched, because we were waiting for the right person who is not only fitting us in the role, technically in the role, but also is kind of bought into the idea, not going to be there just for just to do another job. Uh, One way to do that is that you should have an ESOP policy. ESOP is essentially an employee stock options. With that, what happens is essentially you're asking a person to not take your full market salary, but to take a part of it, and part of it as ESOPs or as share of your company. That essentially ensures that whoever is going to be coming in is coming in fully convinced that they're going to be building this product. It's a tough, it's tough to get these kind of employees, especially with the market being so open, and market essentially rewarding a lot of people through money. But if you get that right team in place initially, your half of your work is done. So employee stock options is what I would suggest, is how you would go ahead and get your first few hires. Essentially convincing that money is not the only thing, and especially if the company becomes very, very big, then the value of your stocks would essentially become even 10 times in a year. That's how fast startups grow.
I have another question for you. So when those Chinese apps got banned, there was this vacuum in that space.
Right.
And I'm sure that multiple such apps were trying to compete, and then there was this cutthroat competition.
Right.
So how did you manage to keep up with the competition and break in a very short time?
In that there were so there was a two-way approach. One was that we were able to get to the people before others, essentially using our social media presence and getting our brand ambassadors, as we call them, who talk about Kaagaz, essentially the influencers that I talked about some time back. But nobody would go ahead and use your product if your product is unusable, right? Eventually, marketing would die down, and you should have a product in place which is working, as well as becomes at least as good, if not better, at least as good as what Camp Canada did, right? So I'm talking about our experience only. So this thing was that while the whole viral loop is in place, we would be working very hard to get our products quality up to the mark. And I think that's how we got an initial set of users, but retaining them is the difficult task, and that's where the product comes in play. If the product is good enough, you would get your users retained, and I think that's what worked for us also.
Interesting. So I have another doubt. So like, how do you convince your users to give feedback so that that you are in constant touch with their needs? Because I have seen many people, they're not willing to type out their feedback, or go reach out to the team, and if they just have bad experience, they will just uninstall and switch. So how do you make sure that you are constantly up to date with the users' concerns?
People like to talk about their problems if they get a platform for that. So one is that you should be approachable, and you should be approachable in the sense that they have access to it. So we have our WhatsApp channel open, right? Click of a button, our WhatsApp channel opens up. You could put in your complaint. One was that. The other is that we have our internal app rating, which essentially Play Store helps you provide. You have an API wherein it tells you that whether you like the app or not, please go ahead and rate it. And essentially, the idea is that they should be able to see a platform where they're going to be using it. And interestingly, people who are unhappy with the app, they leave a review. The chance of them leaving a review is much higher than people who are happy with the app. So
Okay.
you always get your 1 stars and a review in place, and we try to convince and we try to ask them what is the problem with the app that you faced. Once you have that communication open, then it's much easier to understand the problem and work on it. We don't try to get the ratings change. What we try to do is we understand the problem. So for that, the communication has to open up, and for that, a platform has to be available.
Sir, I want to ask a question. That's a personal question. So, while designing the Kaagaz app, did you, you did all the technical things all alone, or you had your own team?
For first almost 6 months of Kaagaz, I was the only developer,
Wow.
and I was the only one who was developing most. And I'm not an Android developer; I'm a backend developer.
Okay.
It was a really tough time because Android works very differently. But ठीक है, learnings, and that's the fun of being hands-on for so many years. I've been hands-on developer for almost 15 years now. So 15 साल से कर रहे हैं. You tend to learn, technology faster.
Wow. So, sir, were there any, technical issues? Like, was there anything that you found like, ये तो होएगा ही नहीं, and suddenly, you found the solution, something like that, if ever happened?
So that happens a lot. In fact, there was so the first version of the Android app would not work on Xiaomi phones, by the way. So when we had rolled it out, so Xiaomi से खूब गाली पड़ रही थी. We got a lot of bad reviews from there. So what I did was I went ahead and bought a Xiaomi phone first. सबसे पहले मैं Xiaomi का phone लेकर आया कि उसमें क्यों नहीं चल रही है. Essentially, whatever it takes to get your things working, right? I remember while developing, after the second release, third release के लिए, there was a time when I didn't sleep for 3 nights from the problem. For 3 whole nights, I did not have a wink of sleep. And eventually, in the morning, I was able to crack it. So when I sent a build to my co-founders कि test कर लो, I'm going to sleep, and I slept for 15 hours straight. Yep, सुबह उठूंगा उसके बाद ही करूंगा. But it happens, a lot of times the solution is right there in front of you, and you spend so much time on the problem that you're unable to see it. Taking a break helps, but I mean, it's all part of the journey, right?
Yeah, right.
Sir, I have a question as well.
Sure.
So, like you said that you were a backend developer for like a decade, for more than a decade, like for 15 years.
Right.
So I'm sure, like, so first of all, I would like to ask, like, you were learning a new platform, right? Android,
Right.
when you started with the app. So, as a seasoned developer, how did you approach like the learning part? And in my case, after I was done with front end, I was really apprehensive of choosing a new technology because of the fear that I may forget the practices or the skills I have developed in the front end technology, like for practicing after 2-3 months. So I was really apprehensive of taking up a new technology. So what's your take on this? I would say.
One, I think the most important thing is that I really didn't have a choice. Not having a choice really helps because then you have to do this anyways. Secondly, it's not about the learning. I think it's more about unlearning. A lot of things that you learn as a developer in one area, you have to unlearn them while you're taking up a new technology. What worked for me essentially initially was that since my backend was has always been Java, and I've already written Java, and Android had this possibility of writing code in Java. So that helped me because I was essentially aware of the language. What helps essentially is that if you have one thing which are comfortable with, learning a new technology isn't a problem because you are comfortable with something. It could be a database, it could be relational database, could be the language that you code in. Having one thing common and adding a new layer to it helps. At least that's what my experience has been.
Okay, yes, sir. Like that's understandable. Switching to a new technology is more scary.
It is, and Unlearning is so. I remember with Java also. What happened was we brought Java brought in functional programming in Java 8. Essentially, before that, you had to write a really long piece of code for something as simple as going through a for loop also. Uh, so uh, Java brought in functional programming, and you had to unlearn the way uh, to write functional programs. And the only way to do that was to write as much as you can, make yourself as much uncomfortable as you can. Because more uncomfortable you are with something, better the chances you're going to be learning something.
Okay, thank you, sir. That was insightful.
So one last question I'd like to ask you. So suppose I have an idea, okay, and then basically I'll do my research. What are the other startups, that are working on the same idea? And I've apparently found a startup, or maybe a good company that is working on the same principle. Now, should I go ahead with my idea because the company must already, heading the first comer advantage it has? So should I be pursuing that idea or not?
For that, I would suggest the way to do that is if it's a B2C product, at least that's what I've seen, and is you find out what people are not liking about your product. Essentially, to know where is the gap. So even in B2B, I mean, we've seen that a lot of companies which have become unicorns or multi-billion billion companies just by understanding what is it that one need that a current company is unable to fulfill. So in our case also, we were making mobile only apps, right? So there are Adobes of the world, right, which are already doing it. But there is something that they're unable to fulfill, and something that essentially makes people either scared of to use that product or unhappy with that product. To get to that point and see if there is a common pattern there. If you're able to get to that common pattern, and when you talk to people, make an MVP and ask them to use it, whether that solves the problem. It may seem like a David versus Goliath problem, but essentially it's not. Google was not the first search engine in the world.
Right.
It came in much later, right? But the page rank algorithm got better results, right? So it's not in the long run. It's not always the bigger, company that's going to win. Companies become big and they destroy themselves also. The idea always is that customers are going to be a solution for everything. If as long as you have happy customers and at least a majority of it, you should have a problem. You will be able to scale up your product.
Thank you, sir, for answering our questions. So I hope everybody was very enlightened. I really enjoyed the session. I think Rick would carry forward.
Good. Thank you. Thank you,
I
everyone.
have a question for.
Sure.
So, like you shared, the process is too long. So, what was your motivation, and how you managed all this? If you feel depressed, and I think sometimes some demotivation come. How do you manage this?
One, I can only tell you how I have been able to do it. It's worked for me. It may seem as if it's solution which is personal to me, but you could go ahead and take an understanding from that. What I tended to do is one is to have someone you can talk to you about your problems, and that could be your co-founders as well. It could be a spouse, it could be a parent, or anyone. One is that you should have someone to talk to. The other is that you should have a place where you could vent out your frustrations, and that could be a physical activity, going to a gym or cycling or running, wherein you are not thinking about your problem and are completely away from it. So that helps, and essentially the things with startup is that it's a marathon journey. It isn't something that you run in a day and you finish it off. So keeping yourself motivated and keeping yourself mentally healthy is very, very important. To do that, stay physically healthy as well is what I would suggest. I hope that answers your question.
Yes.
So we have few questions from the chat. So first of all, what are the key mistakes that founders make that we have to avoid? Gulvansh Gupta asked that.
One is not talking to your customers. That's the most common mistake. It may seem counterintuitive because that is as a solution as a common mistake. It's right out there, but all of us tend to make that mistake. Not we think of a solution as a solution in the head without talking to the users. This user may not require that solution at all. So talking to the customers is the most important. Not talking to the customer is the most important mistake people make. The other important mistake is that they tend to try to make a perfect product on the day of the launch. There is no such thing as a perfect product. The idea is to build as fast as you can and ship out as fast as you can so that you can give a product, even if it's breaking at different places to the user, so that you can get feedback from them. That's another common mistake. The third is that people have different ideas about how startups are and how they work. I'm hoping that whatever I've talked about has given a better picture. Startups aren't really, really very cool places. If you're looking for financial stability, if you have that idea clear in your head, that would be very helpful. That's it at the top of my head.
So we will be ending this session right now. So EDC thanks our esteemed guest speaker, Mr. Tamanjit Bindra, for this session and for sharing his know-hows and expertise regarding his entrepreneurial journey. I'm sure this coins the heart of the upcoming new generation of entrepreneurs right here with us in this meet. So EDC also looks forward to collaborate with Team Kaagaz for future events and also for such a fun session where we all go away with some knowledge that we can use later on. So this brings us to the end of session. Thank you guys for joining, and thank you so much for taking time and for being candid with us, and you're talking about where you failed and where you succeeded.
Good. Thanks a lot, team, and thank you everyone for coming here and listening to whatever I had to say. Hope this helps you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.